Week 6, a bounce-back week for many top players. And at the same time, it also brought up an interesting question. Can a non-position player actually help your team more than a first-round pick? Hey, how are you, folks? Jason Horowitz, glad to be with you on the CBS Fantasy Football Series. It's who's hot and who's not, and obviously nobody hotter than Adrian Peterson, the rookie, leading the NFL in rushing yards. And because of a bye week, he's played just 5 games where some of the top backs have rushed in 6. 607 yards just on the ground alone, the most for a rookie back through 5 games since Hall of Famer Eric Dickerson, and not bad company to be in. We welcome in Jamey Eisenberg from Miami. And Jamey, everyone knows about Adrian Peterson and the fact that the Bears have never allowed that many yards to one running back. But I got to ask you the other side of the question, and I brought it up to you 2 weeks ago. You said no, no, no. But again, Devin Hester, a receiving touchdown and a touchdown on a punt return. If you get points for return touchdowns, why not number 23 in Chicago?
Well, if you get points for return touchdowns, then yes, Devin Hester. But otherwise, how many touchdowns did he have before this, Jason?
He had 3 before this week, Jamey.
How many did he have receiving before this?
None.
Exactly. So 1 week against a defense that can't defend the pass but is great against the run. And when next time they play Minnesota, you want to start Devin Hester, start Devin Hester. But otherwise, forget about it.
But, Jamey, how many touchdowns does Steven Jackson have and does Shaun Alexander have?
Well, you're talking about guys that are going to get 30 touches a game as opposed to a guy who's going to get 1 pass thrown his way on a special play or a fluke situation. So I'll take my chances with Steven Jackson unhealthy and Shaun Alexander banged up than Devin Hester on a one-play thing.
All right, it's just an option. He is owned in about 10 to 15% of CBSSports.com fantasy leagues. All right, let's get into Drew Brees and Matt Hasselbeck, the return of fantasy studs here. It was another game that had 2 hot players on the same field. Both guys had big weeks. Brees this week gets the Falcons. Hasselbeck gets the Rams. They have to be in the lineup for huge weeks, right?
Well, I think so, because you're talking about, some of the quarterbacks on byes with Brett Favre and Derek Anderson not available, Kurt Warner now hurt, Vince Young banged up. You got to look at those 2 guys as great options. Hasselbeck, even without Deion Branch, had a great game from Bobby Ingram, Nate Burleson, Ben Obumanu, guys who you've never heard of before in some instances. So I think he's still, playing well. And as you mentioned, Shaun Alexander has struggled, so they're going to have to throw the ball. Drew Brees was kind of a surprise. We didn't expect him to play this well because he's been struggling, leading the NFL in interceptions coming into the week with 9. So he has a good game against the Seahawks on the road. We'll see if he can keep it up. Obviously the matchup is good against Atlanta, but you have to roll with him. Hopefully he keeps it going, getting guys like David Patton, Lance Moore involved, and maybe Marcus Colson finally gets to do something outside of just catch 1 pass for a touchdown.
And we'll get more into the Saints receivers and move makers this week. Jamey, you talked about Shaun Alexander. Let's get into this a little bit. One of the 2 really cold running backs so far, Rudy Johnson, Shaun Alexander. You saw in this game that they brought in Leonard Weaver when they were trying to come back. If people have Shaun Alexander, how much trouble are you in?
Well, you're not in trouble this week because they're playing the Rams. The Rams are one of the worst run defenses in the NFL. If he can't get going this week, then it's time to worry. But I think he's going to have a big game this week. We have him really near the top of our rankings on CBSSports.com for a reason, just because he has a very good history against St. Louis, and I think this is going to be a big week. He doesn't like getting booed at home, and I think you're going to see him come out and run all over the Rams.
But we thought that about the Saints as well. What about Rudy Johnson on the other side?
Well, Rudy Johnson, you got to keep an eye on his injury, coming back from a hamstring. It's been a couple weeks now, including their bye week. He didn't start, but he played last week, so I think you'll see him be more involved. It was probably more of a precautionary thing. So another good matchup for this guy as well, Rudy Johnson against the Jets. Jets are another team that struggles to defend the run, and I think you'll see Rudy Johnson get back involved this week and put up some fantasy points for some of our users.
And obviously with Rudy Johnson, as it has been with Steven Jackson, it has been the injury bug so far this season. Let's get into the hot running backs, Jamey, and let's talk about the Joneses. Maurice Jones-Drew, another big game. Thomas Jones had a couple of big runs early, helping to account for 130 yards. But with Thomas Jones, do you think that continues? I know he's got the Bengals this week, but in week-in, week-out basis, how much value does he have knowing that the offense has struggled?
Well, I think with him, you look at the matchup. This week is a good matchup for him, so you definitely start him. The concern is that he's not getting in the end zone, and I think if you're looking at it from a yards-based league, then he's going to be fine for you. But if you're in a scoring league, then he's not helping you at all because he hasn't scored a touchdown yet for the Jets. So I think, as you mentioned, the offense is struggling. Chad Pennington not getting it done. There's a chance that he may be benched at some point. But I think when the matchup favors the run for the Jets, I think you definitely start him in your lineup.
Jets fans want him to be benched last week, let alone the next couple of weeks, although Eric Mangini is saying that Chad Pennington, for now, is still a starter. Real quick, let's get into the hot wide receivers. Wes Welker, Dante Stallworth. Obviously, they're to play every week, had big games, and that says everything about the Patriots as a whole. But what about Bernard Berry? And I know I was joking around with Devin Hester earlier, but Brian Griese is putting up big numbers. Will he be the one that is the benefactor of all of that?
I think he has to be, because Muhsin Muhammad, getting up in age. The concern is, I guess, maybe more so with the tight ends being involved than Devin Hester, because Greg Olsen now becoming a factor in the passing game. Desmond Clark has a good relationship with Brian Griese going back to their days in Denver. But Berry is the most talented receiver on the field, the guy that can stretch the field, the guy that can go short, over the middle. He does everything. The good thing for him is in a contract year, so I think you'll see him start to put up those numbers that are going to earn him those big dollars. But hopefully there's a sign of things to come, and maybe he'll get those deep passes as opposed to your favorite, Devin Hester.
And other than Devin Hester, he probably is the most talented man on the field, because we know Cedric Benson isn't doing anything right now for Chicago.
No.
Jamey, we will talk to you this week during Move Makers and read everything on CBSSports.com.
I look forward to talking to you again.
Folks, that'll do it for Who's Hot, Who's Not. But for plenty more, be sure to check out everything all over the CBS Audience Network. For Jamey Eisenberg, I'm Jason Horowitz. Take care.